Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Minority Reports podcast and digital series. I am your host, Mona Sheikh, you guys. Your host is all vaccinated up. Yeah, that's right. I got my vaccination. That's right. Feeling very secure about myself. I think this is the first time my self-esteem has been raised because I feel so secure because of the vaccine, you guys. Is that a thing? I don't know. But we're going to find out because my guest today, that's what he does. He critiques the creatives, you guys. That's what he does. And we're going to get into how do you become a film critic for the San Francisco Chronicle. Here's my very talented friend, Zaki Hasan. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Oh my God, thank you for being here. This is lovely. I like your, got your little blue shirt action going on. We both got the blue.
This is my Blockbuster video shirt.
Oh, look at that.
I'm keeping the flag flying for Blockbuster because we're all Blockbuster kids.
We're all Blockbuster kids, man. No denied there. How much would they charge if you would bring in late? What was their fee? Wasn't there a fee for it?
It was ridiculous is what I remember. I couldn't put an exact dollar value on it, but I know being a high schooler, you did not want to rack up Blockbuster late fees.
Yeah, it was expensive, man. I think it was like $50 or $80 or something if you didn't return the Blockbuster movie in time. It was like something stupid, which is like a lot of money if you're in high school. You're like $50, $80. Like, that's a lot of money.
They'd send someone to your house. They'd start breaking legs. It was crazy.
Man, I don't know which neighborhood you were living in, but that's not what they did in mine. And I grew up next to the projects in Jersey City, and they didn't even do that there. So I don't know what they're doing in the Bay Area, Zaki. Zaki, I have a question, man. First of all, How long have you been a film critic for the San Francisco Chronicle?
I've been writing for the Chronicle now for about 2 years.
Okay.
Before that, I wrote for Philly Weekly out of Philadelphia. I wrote for HuffPost, and gosh, I mean, I've written for a bunch of venues. I currently also write for IGN.
Okay.
So I've been with a number of venues for many years now. I first started doing film reviews for my high school newspaper about 25 years ago. So that's how I got my start, and I've been lucky because 25 years later I get to keep doing it. So
man, I mean, how does one become a film critic? Like, you just start talking smack, and then you're just like, yeah, I said what I said.
Yeah, it's funny because I read not that I do it very often, but just recently I went back and I've been adding some of my older reviews to my archive, on Rotten Tomatoes, and I was reading some of my early stuff, and I'm like, man, I would kick this kid's ass. Like, like who does he think he is? You know what I mean? Like that's sort of my fascination, because one thing I find is the older I get, the more equipped I feel to be able to do this, because I've just seen more stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, what is a 16-year-old have to say about anything, really? That's my thought now as a college instructor, where I'm like, man, some 16-year-old going to tell me about what movie to watch. I'm gonna be like, keep walking,
Right. That's
but,
right.
But I will say, but I was a film buff even back then. I grew up loving not just watching films, but reading about films. Even when I was in grade school, I would go to the school library and I would check out how did they make King Kong, and like how did they do special effects and things. That was just stuff that I was always interested in. So I read a lot, and so I did build up a lot of knowledge just from that, and then I got to keep writing about it. So it's been nice.
Yeah. I mean, did you go to college for what? Journalism, communication? What did you go to school for?
So for my undergrad, I went to film school in Columbia College in Chicago.
Okay.
And so I did film and video production there. That's actually what my undergrad is. And then for my postgrad, I did communication studies. And so my work as a journalist is really sort of to the side of the actual education that I received, because right out of high school, I got a job at a local community paper in Chicago. So I would do film criticism for them, and I kept writing even when I wasn't explicitly studying it. So it's just funny that I ended up in journalism as a profession, even though that's not something that I specifically pursued as an education. But I mean, but my education does.
That's right.
Have
Serve
directly to do with
you.
it.
I mean, did you want to be a filmmaker, and then you were like, you know what? Even more fun criticizing them.
I think I did. I think I not so much like this is definitely what I want to do, but more like this is something I might want to do. That was my thought. And what I found is the more I got into the weeds on the production side and putting stuff together, and it was great experience. I'm glad I had it, but I was just like, I don't like doing that.
Yeah.
I like analyzing film. I like getting into the, what is it saying? What's happening here? And so I just gradually shifted my focus, slightly to the side of what my education was supposed to be about, which I'm sure my dad is thrilled about because they paid a lot of money to send me to film school. And,
oh man, how much money is it to go to film school?
Well, this was coming up on 20 years ago, so it was probably cheaper than it is now. But it was not cheap. It was not cheap. This is a private school, and I was very grateful that my parents were willing to they were willing to be out of pocket to keep me from racking up debt, and that's something I can never.
Yeah,
I can't even sum up how grateful I am to them for that.
Dude, how are brown parents cool 20 years ago having their kid not go to medical school or law school and be like, film, that's very secure. You go right ahead and we'll pay for it.
What's funny is they were very much not cool with it, but to their credit, they knew that like me in med school was not going to happen. Me going to engineering school was not going to happen. Right. So they were like, all right, like at least you're doing something. But I can say for certain that when when you have the chat, you have the talk, Mom, Dad, I want to go to film school. That was a difficult conversation to have,
Yeah. I mean, I remember having a conversation very similar to that with my family, but my family dynamic's very different. I have 4 older brothers, and we used to live in Jersey City, and my parents always lived in Pakistan, and of course we lived here. And I remember I was like about to turn 18, and I came out of my artist closet, and I sat my brothers down, and I was like, hey, I want to be a performer, I want to go to acting school. And my brothers gave me an ultimatum. They told me that either I was going to go to school and become like a physical therapist or something like that, or they were going to send me back to Pakistan. I was going to be married off to whoever mom tells me to be married off to. Those were my options, Zaki. So very different options. Do you think it would have been different for you had you been a girl, not a dude?
I'm fairly certain. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what that even looks like, but yeah, I'm fairly certain. In my family, it was just the 2 siblings. It's just me and my older brother. Mm-hmm. So that's not something, I mean, I don't even have a point of reference to be like, how would a sister, have functioned? I have no idea. One thing I will say is, you say you have 4 older brothers. My daughter, she is the youngest with 4 older brothers.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So, I did not have a sister, but I definitely look at with her, she's only 4. She actually, her 4th birthday is tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday.
But, yeah, it's, and it's gone by like that, by the way.
Yeah, right.
And to that point, I mean, I know she's going to be turning 18 just like that soon. Yeah. And that's, that's that question of like, well, whatever life she wants to choose, I want to try to be as accommodating and understanding for whatever that is. And I say that from my own experience, because I'm very fortunate because nowadays we're sort of in an age where brown people are really breaking out into these non-traditional fields. But I'll tell you what, I mean, it was a pretty lonely road when I went off into a non-med, non-engineering thing. Yeah. And it's worked out. It's worked out pretty well. So.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, that's amazing. Is your daughter like the princess of the family, or is she a tomboy? How is she?
What's funny is we call her Princess Tomboy. Because
So true.
because when she needs to be, she's full on princess. I want the jewelry. I want the this. But when she needs to, she can throw an elbow or two to get her way. So she knows what's up.
Yeah, that's and listen, that's the joy of having older brothers. They teach you how to throw a punch.
Yeah,
They teach.
yeah, and they're so protective of her. It's like
Oh, that's very
it's nuts,
sweet.
Yeah, her immediate older brother, who's like 3 years older, he's kind of a jerk, But
Yeah.
but the other ones, yeah, they're always protecting her. So that's nice.
Oh, that's very sweet. Yeah, that wasn't the case in my family.
Oh,
Not at all. We were just beating the crap out of each other all day,
oh,
every day. Yeah,
oh no.
that's kind of what we did. I mean, Zaki, you were. I wanted to actually ask you. As someone who's on the creative side, you're more on the critic side. I'm on the creative side. I'm not a filmmaker, but I am a stand-up comic. I'm an actor. I'm a performer. When I have to be honest, I don't usually read the film critic's point of view because
Yeah,
I'm the kind of person that I like to go make decisions on my own.
yeah,
If I watch a trailer and it catches my attention, I'll go watch it. Right?
yeah.
How did this whole idea of film critics even came into existence? Like
Hmm.
that's what fascinates me,
Well, I mean, film criticism, obviously, the progenitor is theater criticism, and I mean, criticism of, and I think the term itself, we tend to view like, oh, you're criticizing me, and that we view that as a negative, and it's not inherently meant to be that way. And obviously, there's restaurant critics, et cetera. Every
Sure.
artistic endeavor, and just to be clear, you know what? A lot of critics are assholes.
Yeah.
And they derive sort of a sadistic glee in tearing down other people's endeavors, and certainly for me, that's not my intention. That's never my intention.
Mhm.
But I do try to be honest, right? But the way I view my anything I write is, I'm not saying everyone should think this way. I'm saying this is what I thought, and you can take it or leave it, right? But
Mhm.
beyond that, I also view it as, and this is something I'm acutely aware of because of the venues I write for. When you're in the Chronicle, when you're at IGN, the people who made this thing are probably going to see it. They're going to see the review, like it'll cross their path,
Sure.
right? And so you have to ask yourself, do I want to be part of making this person's day better or worse?
Mhm.
Because I believe there's value in a negative critique that has constructive elements to it. And so that, for me, I'm not interested in just blowtorching any movie, even a movie that I don't like. I'm not going to say I liked it if I didn't. I'll say it just didn't work for me. But I'll say here's the issues I had, and I will say here's what I thought this was really effective. I would have liked to see more of this that they did. Why? Because that's kind of the point of this. To me, it's like if a friend asks me to read a script, kind of the same deal. I'm going to try to give a constructive critique, even if I don't like it. And that's sort of, it's a position. It's a position that affords you a big audience, but there's a responsibility that comes with that. So I'm a big believer in giving a constructive element, even when it's negative.
With great power comes great responsibility.
You got it.
Spider-Man, baby.
They nailed it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You know what it is? Sometimes I sometimes read critics like a film critic point of view, and I'm just like, well, I don't understand. Like I don't understand. Sometimes I've read certain criticisms about by a film critic, and I'm just like, I watched the movie, I freaking loved it. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, people were taking a giant shit on Coming to America. They were like, Coming to America sucks.
The second one.
The second one. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm gonna watch it because it has so many stand-up comedians in there. I'm like, just the fact that there are stand-up comics in there, just for that alone, I'm gonna watch it. And honestly, I loved it. Like, I thought it was great. I thought it was awesome. I loved the references. I loved the jokes. I loved the costumes, the dancing. Wesley Snipes, like, just stole the show. I mean,
He was great in that. Yeah.
He needs to do more comedy. I mean,
He does.
when the hell did we ever think that Wesley Snipes could do friggin' comedy?
Yeah, it's true.
Last time I checked, Wesley was dodging IRS to pay his taxes. I mean, that's what Wesley became famous for God's sake.
Which is itself pretty funny that he thought he could dodge.
Which is in itself is hilarious, right? But I personally have always loved Wesley Snipes. I think he's so talented, and I just love him. And now I love him even more because of what he did in Coming to America. But I was just so baffled by how people were just like, Coming to America is a bad movie, and I was like, not in the slightest. It's a really freaking good movie. So what were your kind of thoughts on Coming to America?
So Coming to America, I gave it like a medium review. Like I leaned, it was like leaning positive, and in that there were things I liked about it, and I was definitely like, if what I compared it to, I was like, it was like watching, what did I say? It was like watching The Very Brady Christmas, like the reunion movie where they brought back the Brady Bunch like 20 years later, and they're all a little older, but you're like, hey, everybody's back, and it's fun to like hang out with these people again. Okay. That was my feeling on Coming to America, where I was like, I don't think it's as good as the first one, but I'm also like, I don't think it needs to be, because this is just like spending a couple hours with these people who we liked, and I liked Akeem, and I like, one thing I didn't like is that Lisa is like barely a character in the sequel, the wife, the queen.
Yes.
And that bugged me, because I was like, she's so important to the first one, and she's like the and in this one, which felt wrong to me, because and one thing the other thing I didn't like was the way in which they contrived him having a son. Because I was like, oh, that's kind of gross. I was like, just sort of just dropping that in the middle of the movie, and I just thought it would be more
stand-up comedy clubs. You know what kind of gross shit we talk about, Zaki?
Well, I just mean like I mean he was, they've inserted like a sexual assault into the story of into the middle of the first movie, which is weird to me. You know what I mean? Because to me, it's like, well, I get it. You're trying to come up with a reason for him to have a son, and I thought I really liked. Gosh, I'm forgetting his name, but the actor who played his son, I actually really liked him, and I liked the scenes with Eddie, and I was like, just make him. Him
you talking about Jermaine Fowler?
Yes, that's right. And he was on a show a couple years ago.
Also stand-up comic.
Yeah, and he's great, because was it Superior Donuts? I think that was a sitcom a couple years ago.
That's it.
And I liked him from that.
He's very good. Yes.
And I was like, why not just like make him his son, like with his wife, and he like doesn't want to be part of the royal thing. He wants to go to America. Like, you know what I mean? There was a way I thought. Because it's like you have to add like three steps in the middle to get there. But all that notwithstanding, I didn't feel bad for having watched it, and ultimately that's what it comes down to. For a movie like this, you're like, well, did I enjoy myself? Did I laugh? I did. That's good enough for me.
Yeah. I mean, Zaki, does San Francisco Chronicles, or I guess even other like film critics, like, I don't know. Do you guys get a demand? Like, so for 2 weeks, Zaki has stopped writing film critics, and they're like, "Where is Zaki? We can't watch a movie without him. Please, I need your insight."
I mean, I'd love to think that we're that in demand, but I'm not naive enough. I think if I just magically disappeared tomorrow, I don't think anybody would miss my writing.
Oh, don't say that.
I'm not like, I'm not trying to be falsely humble, but I'm like, there's critics are a dime a dozen, right? Mm-hmm. But that said, I think if a critic does their job well, and I hope I do my job well, you cultivate a voice.
Yeah.
And what I always say, and this gets to a broader conversation about Rotten Tomatoes and how it's sort of, in my opinion, devalued what we do. But if you the trick is, don't just look at individual reviews. Find critics who you like.
Interesting.
And look for their opinion, and that doesn't mean you're going to agree with them all the time.
Sure.
When I was a kid, Roger Ebert, who was a Chicago-based critic, he was like the guy. I was in Chicago growing up, and Gene Siskel was there, and Roger Ebert. They were both from there.
Did you know that he went on a date with Oprah?
I did know that. Yeah.
And he's the one who encouraged Oprah to own her show.
Look at that. So he gets to he has a little piece of that legend, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he, for me, I would get on I'd go to the Chicago Sun-Times website every Friday. I would read the new Chicago Roger Ebert reviews in the Sun-Times. And like I said, I wouldn't always agree with him, but I loved his writing. I still love his writing. And to this
Mhm.
day, it tells you something. 20 plus years later, I still remember specific turns of phrase in
Mm.
specific reviews. Like I could pull up a review and be like, I remember in his review of this, he said like this. He said it a certain way, and I remember that.
Mhm.
And so that's really what inspired me, and it's one of the great losses in my life that I never got the opportunity to ask him to critique my critiques.
Mhm.
I never had that chance. That's something I would have dearly loved, but truthfully, I mean, he was such an inspiration to me.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. I mean, growing up, I mean, who's the film critic you turn to? Roger Ebert, right?
Yeah,
Roger
yeah,
Ebert. He was the man.
he was the guy.
James here said, does Zaki review foreign films or indie films the same way as big budget Hollywood films?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes and no. And I'm not dodging. I will explain. I think what I try to do is judge the film based on what's expected of it. So obviously, a micro budget movie or an indie movie is not trying to be a four quadrant blockbuster, so you're not going to judge it the same way. Ultimately, though, the criteria I use is exactly the same. When the movie ends, I take stock of my feelings. I'm like, how did I feel now that this movie is
Mhm.
done? How did it make me feel? Do I feel good about it? Why? Do I feel bad about it? Why? And I just kind of unpack my thoughts. And that's for me. That's part of the reason why, generally speaking, I need sort of a debrief period before I can start a review. I know I have some colleagues who like they'll watch it and they'll just go home and type the review, and I'm not able to do that.
Mm.
I need to let it sit, and I
Mm.
need to sort of interface with my feelings
Marinade.
about it.
Needs to marinate.
Marinate, exactly. That's the perfect term.
Yeah.
And sometimes uh, you'll have an initial positive reaction, and then it calcifies a little bit. In which case, I try to bring that into the writing. I say, well, this is how I felt before, but this, as I thought about it, this happened.
Yeah.
Just give an honest reaction.
Right. Right. James says Siskel and Ebert were wonderful on TV for years. Yeah, they
They were
were.
great. They were
I
great.
agree with you. I agree with you about Zaki, about the fact that, that's not something that I actually thought about until you articulated, is that you find your favorite critic and you just follow them. You don't,
Mhm.
you mentioned Rotten Tomatoes. Now, why do you feel Rotten Tomatoes devalues?
Well, I think what Rotten Tomatoes does is people look at that number and they're like, "Oh, it's bad," or "Oh, it's good," right? And the
Mhm.
Rotten Tomatoes number, which is, let's say a movie has been rated 65%, right? And so you say, "Oh, well, that's a D. That's terrible," right? And what that is actually is it's 65% of critics are leaning positive or extremely positive about the movie, right? And so what that means is out of hundreds of critiques, every one of those critiques, which spans a spectrum, right? So it's not just good, bad. I mean, there's a spectrum in there, but it's binary. It's being classified as good or bad, and just like that,
Mm.
think about it this way: your average critique is anywhere from 600 to 1,200 words. Well, there's a lot more contained within that than it's good or it's bad, you
Uh-huh.
know. And Siskel and Ebert on their show, they would even, they would say, "All right, two thumbs up" or split vote. And I mean, even that was boiling down a fairly nuanced analysis, right? And so this drives me crazy. And I'm on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm grateful for the exposure, but I'm also cognizant of the way it turns what we do into Yelp reviews. And I think,
Mm.
all people do is look at that number. They don't look at the critique. And that's why I'm always like, even when you go to Rotten Tomatoes, see what the critics you like are saying. And again, when I say like, I don't mean agree with, because you will disagree with the critics even that you like.
Mhm.
But what are they saying? That's what you want to look at.
Yeah. Zaki, that's a very interesting point because, film art is subjective, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so it really is about following certain critics who probably have similar tastes than you do to
Right.
you, right? They have like similar taste to you. So,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to just be like, well, just like you said, I like this about Coming to America. I didn't like this about Coming to America. And then you try to give like an overall score to be like, this works, this doesn't work, rather than being like, that's an atrocious movie. Okay, unless it's like freaking Gigli, then you're like, okay, I gotta go. Like, this sucks. Man, I remember that movie that came out. Goodness. Who's the director of Black Swan? Black Swan? Remember? Black Swan?
Yeah. It's Aronofsky.
Aronofsky, I think you and I both know the kind of director he is. I think he's brilliant, but a lot of people get really freaked out by his stuff, right? The last movie that he made, what was about being in a house and, there's a couple, and then there's a scene where the woman's pregnant, she gives birth, and then, do you know which movie I'm referring to?
Mother.
Mother.
Yeah, with Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes. And that movie was just so dark. Something like that, because it almost feels like, it's like when you go to a museum and you watch abstract art, you're just like, you can interpret this in many, many ways. So what does this art mean exactly? So when I watched Mother, to me, it was a pretty abstract movie. I remember watching it with friends, and my friends were like, I fucking hated it. Fuck that guy. That movie sucked. And I was like, dude, relax. It's Aronofsky. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant director. I love him.
He's doing something. I mean, you're reacting that strongly, so he's doing
That's
something.
right. That's right. It was like that kind of negativity he's putting out in the world. I was like, I don't think he's putting out negativity. He is an artist. He's showing you his vision, and maybe you don't have to watch it. You don't have to agree with it, but he is an artist. It's subjective. I thought that this scene was pretty dark, but when you watch something like that, is it hard to criticize a movie like that?
Like Mother? Honestly, that kind of a critique is almost easier to get into. Not because it's easier to criticize, but because it allows for sort of a conversation, right? So I mean, like, full disclosure, I wasn't a big fan of Mother, but I appreciate it. You know what I mean? And so there's that nuance of like, well, I didn't like it, but I appreciated it. I appreciated what he was doing, and it didn't necessarily land for me. But what I'm just doing right here, that allows for, you're going to get a conversation started. You can start writing. Your thoughts start coming out, and so that's hopefully something meaningful. I find that more interesting than, for example, doing kind of your average blockbuster. Because at some point, like, I'll give you an example. I just did my review for Godzilla versus Kong, which I did like, but I'm also like, that's a critic-proof movie, right? That if it's called Godzilla versus Kong, well, the people who are watching that movie are showing up for Godzilla versus Kong, and if you get that, like, you're getting what was advertised, right? So that's almost harder to like find a meaningful conversation about. Even though again, I did like it, versus something like Mother, where even if you don't like it, you can get into it. You can. How does it make you feel? Why does it make you feel that way? What's he saying? What's he doing? It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. James said, what, after watching hundreds of films, does Zaki ever find movies now where he gets an emotional response watching them, or is it cold evaluation? Ooh. Cold.
That's a good question. So is this in reference to like watching new films or rewatching older films, right? Because
he's like, after watching hundreds of films, does Zaki ever find movies now where he gets emotional? Now that he gets emotional response watching them.
Absolutely. I mean, that's like, it's impossible for me to ever be cynical about film, because there's so many great films being made. The stuff this year, Nomadland, Minari,
goodness.
I mean, it's always, there's always something new, and that's what's great. I think the truth is, in many ways, picking up on James's question, I find myself getting more emotional now, because I just feel as I get older, I'm more plugged into my emotions, and I'm more honest with my emotions, and it's weird, the stuff that speaks to me. I mean, I remember watching Spotlight for the first time like 5, 6 years ago. Just getting emotional about that, and it's a very simple story. It's a very simple story about a complex investigation, you know. But when you see Mark Ruffalo just break down, and he's like, they knew and they let it happen. I mean, it's impossible not to be affected by it, you know.
Right, right.
So I mean, to that point, I the more movies I watch, the more open I am to all the different ways they can surprise me.
Right, right. Do you ever watch a movie and you're like, damn, like that movie messed me up?
I've definitely had that reaction. I'm trying to think of a movie that left me with that reaction, but I've absolutely had that reaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to marinate on that
You have to
specific.
you have to marinate on that. That's fair. That's fair. I mean, man, I think about, like you're a film critic and what you do. I mean, you're a film critic for life. Like, do you go on to what else is a film critic? Do you write a book about all the films that you've criticized and put together a book of all the all your reviews on books, like on movies? How does that work?
That's really something, because that's one of those conversations that I've had with my wife recently, where she's like, what's the end game here? And I was like, well, I guess I just review a bunch of movies and then eventually I die, I guess. Like, I don't know what, I mean. I mean, I'm lucky, right? Because when you think about it, I love movies. I get to watch movies and I get paid to write about them. Well, good, for goodness sake. Like, I mean, that's the good life.
Yeah.
And if that's it,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I can't complain. I hope
Yeah.
it's not it. I've got books that I would like to be involved in. I've been lucky to be a contributor to many books, and I have a biweekly podcast with my creative partner,
Yeah.
who we've been doing that for close to 10 years, and it's just us shooting the breeze talking about movies.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, we're and he's to your point, he's a creative in the industry. He's a writer, and so the conversations we have are very meaningful because I'm able to offer critique from this area, and he's able to offer his perspective from this area, and so that ends up being something hopefully worthwhile.
Yeah. We're talking about critique and criticism. This is how vastly different our worlds are, Zaki. Well, you're talking about criticism on films. I get comments like this on my live stream. Why no makeup, lips color, smile.
Oh, I was gonna say that as a joke, but there it is. Okay.
Yeah. Why don't you smile more? Because that's not something women hear often in the street.
Yeah.
He wants to see full dresses. These are the kind of douchebag, misogynistic criticisms that we get as women.
Yeah. If I could stand up, I would show you my full dress. Sorry.
Zaki, I think he is asking for your full dresses, and I think it's time for you to show the full dresses. Where's the full? Is it a Blockbuster dress? What is it?
It is. It is a Blockbuster night. So
look at that, man! It's the Blockbuster. Now with this influx of Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus and Paramount TV and all HBO Max, do you feel like we are in a place where people are just overloaded with content? Where they're like, I don't know what to watch. It's like overwhelming content. And do you think eventually, because of it, these award shows will become erroneous? Because how many freaking...
It's happening.
Yeah. How many films and TV shows are they going to nominate? Like, how many?
Yeah. I think what you hit on something that's a very real concern. I was actually talking about this exact thing with my students earlier this week. There's a concept that's come into vogue called the paradox of choice, which is the idea that given just an overwhelming number of options, which Netflix does, just row after row after row, we tend to not choose anything and we just gravitate towards what we already know. Mm-hmm. I was reading an article about how the most viewed content during the pandemic, Friends, The Office, The Simpsons.
Wow.
And that tells you something, right? Because I know I've been there. Netflix, you're like scroll, doom scroll. Eventually you're like, you know what? let's just watch episode 5 of season 3 of The Simpsons again. And to your point, we're at an age now where it's never, if you're a content creator, there's never been a better time to get your work made.
Sure.
But there's never been a worse time to get your work seen.
Exactly.
And that, right? I mean, I'm sure I could go to a restaurant and strike up a conversation and just make up a show and say, I created this show, and just make up a streaming service that it's on. And people would like reasonably believe it because there's just so many anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the trade-off, right? When you think about it, in 1997, Titanic came out in December, and it was number 1 at the box office for 16 weeks. 4 months it was number 1 at the box office, right? So that wasn't just new audiences, that was people going back again and again. Why? Because they wanted to experience that again. And that type of thing, I mean, it's never happened since then, and it never will.
Right.
Because the turnover is so rapid, and it's only going to get worse, by the way, because the theatrical window, it has shrunk to basically nothing. Even when we're out of the pandemic, it's going to be a month at most from theater to streaming.
Right.
And the churn is just too much. And it's a shame,
Yeah, I mean, I think about like, your Oscars and your Golden Globes and, and I'm just like, okay, so people already don't really respect the Grammys anymore because they're like, people, it's nonsense. It's not just 5 categories. It's like some 60 some odd categories. They don't even show those categories. They only show 5 or 10 categories. So I'm just wondering, Oscar, it's like, oh, if you go to the Oscars, it's like the Oscars, right? It's like the thing. But I'm looking at all this content that's churning out. I watched Nomadland, loved it. I'm going to watch Minari. Watched Promising Young Woman. That was amazing. I thought it was freaking great. And all this kind of, and I just look at it and I'm just like, there's no way in hell they're going to be able to nominate it. Then I guess then the question comes to, who decides what movies, how many movies they have to watch and how many movies do they have to pick from? Right now, maybe they're picking from 20, but 5 years from now, or even 2 years from now, they have 50 movies to pick from. How do you do that? Do you expand categories? Do you come up with a brand new award show? How does that even work?
Well, I mean, right now the Oscars have like a 10 picture limit for Best Picture, which is expanded from a couple of years ago. It used to be 5, and so they have up to 10 slots. And you'd be surprised actually, because no matter how many films are released in a year, the process tends to be the same, which is it gets whittled down to a handful because of before you get to the Oscars, every city has their Critics Awards. And so certain front runners start to emerge. It's a little bit like a presidential primary, if you think about it. Like before we ended up with Joe Biden, it was like just a clown car, right? And is not meant to be pro or against Joe Biden, but I mean, at the start, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, how are we going to pick?" Right? And then it just kind of got whittled down. The Oscar nomination race is very similar in that sense. That once certain films are getting recognized at the Critic Awards in the big cities, we do it in San Francisco, Chicago, there's New York, all the big ones, St. Louis, Toronto even. And by the time it gets time for Oscar nominations, the field is about 8 or 9 movies.
Wow. James is asking another question. He said, we've talked about a possible stand-up comedy renaissance after COVID. Does Zaki think we'll have a movie renaissance now that movies are being made again?
Well, I mean, they never stopped making movies, really. There was a brief lull for about a month or 2, but they got back into the swing of things pretty quick. So there's a big backlog of completed films that are just sitting there waiting to be released. So I think absolutely we're going to see a whole, especially in terms of the blockbusters. There's Fast and Furious. Is ready to go. I think it's this summer. The James Bond movie is ready to go. The Black Widow, etc. Jurassic Park. Lots of stuff is coming. New Batman. The question is what happens to the theatrical viewing experience? That's the question, is when theaters are at capacity or able to admit capacity, will people want to go back? And I have a question mark surrounding that, not necessarily because of pandemic fears, but I think people have just gotten used to, well, I can just watch it at home. And so I wonder, and what I've said is I think theater going is going to be a little bit like vinyl, where you're going to have like the hardcore fans who will always want that experience, but I think it's going to start whittling down with each
Right.
subsequent generation.
I mean, Zaki, like if you look at the cost of a ginormous TV, like 70 inches or whatever, it's
Hmm.
not a lot. It's like six,
No.
$700, if that. A very
Yeah.
expensive projector, not a lot of money. What it costs to have a family like yours? You have 5 kids, right?
Yeah.
That's 7 folks, including you and your wife.
Yeah.
7 people to go to the movie theater, dude. I don't even know what that bill is like for you. What is that?
Yeah.
Upwards of $200,
It,
$250?
I mean, it's like I don't go to nighttime shows, right? I will go to the
Right.
first show Saturday morning because it's like half, and yeah, I'm lucky because for a lot of the big releases, I watch them. If when theaters are around, I go to like a press screening for
That's right.
free.
That's right.
So and I can usually take one or two of my kids with me. So it's like I'm not the median moviegoer in that sense because I'm
Right.
saving a lot of money that way.
That's
But yeah, between ticket prices and concessions, yeah, you're looking at about $150.
right. So I had a conversation with an executive at a very big studio a while back. And she was telling me that multiplexes will become a thing of the past. And that is happening very quickly. And I think the pandemic has even expedited that process. I think a lot of people are pretty, unsure. It's still about going to the theater. I mean, come October, it might be a different conversation because I think about 85% of the country would be vaccinated by then, but we
Yeah.
still have to see if there are any new outbreaks and, whatever, few question marks that we have, related to COVID. But I wanted to ask you, do you think that multiplexes will sooner than later become a thing of the past? Like you said, it's a vinyl thing where it's like only the hardcore movie fans are going to be left where, it's just going to be one multiplex in like one neighborhood because nobody goes to watch movies anymore.
Yeah. I I think we'll see a significant drop in the number of multiplexes for sure. Like, using my own neighborhood as an example, I have two big, like 30 screen theaters, two different chains that are within 5 minutes of each other.
Well,
I mean, that's not going to be sustainable in the long run, especially if given where the movie going economy is right now.
mm-hmm.
They've got a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah.
I think the theatrical experience will always be something that's in demand for your Avengers and that type of thing. To have that big kind of theme park ride experience. I think for smaller films, we're already seeing it. They're skipping theaters. There was a time when Titanic. I'm just using that as an example. I mean, that was your big spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a big hit the same time as Good Will Hunting, right? And Good Will Hunting, which is an amazing movie, I don't think that would go to theaters today. I think that would be Amazon Prime picks it up, or Netflix picks it up, and that would be a shame when you think about it, right? Because that was a really zeitgeisty movie. It launched Matt Damon's career.
That's right.
And today it would be talked about, right? I'm sure it would be appreciated, but it would disappear pretty quick.
Right.
And that's a shame.
Right. Man, I mean, movies are my life. There was an article that came out during the pandemic last year, and I swear to God, I think this article was written by a brown parent because it was written as essential jobs and non-essential jobs. And I kid you not, Saki, the number one essential job was doctors, and the number one non-essential job was artists. What?
What a shame, right?
I was like, what do you think you're home watching right now? It's artists. It's us. Like content creators, like actors, comedians. It's artists. Like you would lose your freaking mind, if it wasn't to turn Netflix on and put your kids in front of the TV. Like, for God's sake, what are you talking about? I mean, Lucky, like do you feel that artists are underappreciated in our society?
It's interesting. I think they're they're both underappreciated and overappreciated for the wrong thing.
Huh.
Because in that, I just read a poll the other day of kids, and the number one job they want to have, and instead of it being doctor, engineer, it's like YouTuber and stuff. And I was like, well, that's a shame, right? And not to dog on YouTube, people who have YouTube channels and stuff, but I'm just like, I feel like they're focusing on the notoriety and the dollar signs, the potential dollar signs, as opposed to the craft, right? Like that's what art is, right? It's expressing something that's deep inside you that you just need to get out there. That's what art is, and whatever the art you're doing, whether you're a comedian or a chef, and I feel like we overlook that, the emotional and mental health aspect of being an artist, and people tend to look at the dollar signs. Say, I want to be famous, and that's, I always say, I tell my students this all the time. I'm like, ask people who are famous if they like being famous,
That's right. That's right. I think, Cameron Diaz has been pretty vocal ever since she stopped making movies and shows.
Yeah.
And she's been very vocal. She's like, I was miserable. I was miserable being famous. She's like, it was hard. People come at you from all angles. They constantly criticize you for dumb shit. And she's like, I was over it. She was like, it sucked my soul being famous, right? And she was like, that's why I had to get out of the spotlight, and I just wanted to go start my family and just mind my own business. I just wanted to get out of the spotlight. So you're absolutely right. Ask the famous people. The narcissists love it because
right.
The narcissists and the sociopaths, they love it. They eat it up in a freaking cereal bowl. Are you kidding me? They love that. Right. But if you're like even a remotely emotionally, mental healthy person, you're just like, I'm not down for this. Like, this is too much. You have to kind of find that balance to ground you, I feel like, whenever I talk to or have come across, very established producers or even very established actors, male or female, one of the key things I always hear from them is that my family keeps me grounded. My family keeps me grounded. All this is nice and it's great, but I like to go home. I want to go home to my family. I want to go home to my kids. I want to go home to my wife or husband or whatever. Yeah. Is that the same for film critics?
I think, when you talk about achieving notoriety, right? It's very much what you're saying really speaks to, something I've said to my wife about, where I'm like, I don't want to be famous, but I want a level of notoriety where I can get people to return my calls. I can walk down the street, but I can get a phone call return. I mean, to me, that's the sweet spot. That's right down the middle, right?
Got it.
And that's there's a great line in the movie The Insider, which is it depicts a true story of 60 Minutes, right? So Al Pacino plays a 60 Minutes producer named Lowell Bergman, and so he has a line in the movie where he's essentially had a falling out with his company, and he's telling his wife, he says, I'm Lowell Bergman from 60 Minutes. I don't know how many times I've said that on the phone. You leave off the second part, nobody cares who you are. And I'll tell you, I mean, I've been writing for the Chronicle a long time. I've sent out a lot of emails where I say, hey, I'm Zaki Hasan, I'm with the Chronicle, and I get something back pretty quickly. And I always tell myself, I have to tell myself, I'm like, they're responding to the Chronicle part. They don't care who I am. And that's a little piece of perspective that I find very helpful. And don't ever start believing you're too much of a thing,
Right.
I think for me, this job, what I've learned, honestly, is for me, I do it for love. And I do it because I believe film critique is art. I truly do believe that. I think you can write something meaningful and passionate about somebody else's art.
Sure.
But ultimately, you are there to solve someone else's problem. You are there because an editor thinks of you as somebody who's going to help them fill column inches. That's it. That's the job. So you do the job. If you have to make changes, you make the changes. You meet your deadlines, you be easy to deal with. That's all it is for me. I feel so lucky that I've gotten these opportunities. And many of the times I've gotten them, it's because somebody vouched for me. Somebody's like, "Oh, you should give Zaki a call. He'll do a good job for you." And I'm grateful for that. What does that mean? It means you do the work. That's it.
Right.
Like there's no faking. There's no faking it. That's it. You do the work.
Right.
Yeah.
If we have to fill out inches and columns, then why can't we start reaching out to employees in corporate America and let them give reviews of their bosses, of how they're performing per week? Wouldn't that be amazing?
It would be. They wouldn't have those jobs for very long, though, right?
That's very true. We'll just keep them anonymous.
Yeah.
Bob at Microsoft, not very happy this week with the boss, going through a divorce and taking that shit out on us. Yeah, exactly.
Kind of a jerk. Yeah.
Kind of a jerk. I don't know what his problem is. Hey, or writing messages like, I know my boss is cheating on his wife, but hey, I guess his wife just has to find out, huh? What do you say?
Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. Zaki, we're going to start wrapping up soon, my friend, but I wanted to actually ask you about, so it's just film critiquing, no television show critiquing?
I do television as well. Yeah. And I've actually, it's that, the amount of me doing that has gone up over the last year just because there've been more opportunities, so just in this past month, I did a review of the, WandaVision and the Falcon and Winter Soldier, Superman, the new Superman show.
Man,
those are all for the paper.
What did you think of WandaVision?
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Really?
I thought it was a great. I mean, it's funny because it, with these Marvel things, right? I'm always like, look, you gotta expect that it's going to be within the range of what we expect from these Marvel things. So the only question is it good within that range? And I thought, for the most part, this show did some interesting things, within the sort of the radius of what we expect from those. It sort of ended up in a way that was relatively predictable, but I enjoyed the road to getting there.
Yeah. I mean, some things I just couldn't predict, which I thought was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What bothered me, and people close your ears if you haven't seen it, it's gonna spoiler alert. I've initially, when the first episode launched and the second one, I was like, this is weird.
Yeah.
I was like, is this supposed to be like a sitcom, but it's not funny? Like, what is this? Like, what is happening? I think what really bothered me was the premise. I thought the premise was fucking lame, dude. I thought it was lame. Here's the thing. If tragedy has hit your life where you lost your family, you've lost your brother, you lost the love of your life, and then you're like, I'm gonna go and take over an entire town in New Jersey? New Jersey? Of all the places in the world, you couldn't take over a beautiful place in Italy or Spain or even, like, what? New Jersey? Who goes to New Jersey? I grew up in Jersey City. You don't go to New Jersey. They call it the Garden State. There's no fucking garden there. Okay, it's just a state. That's all it is. Okay? The state. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So you lost everything, and then you mind control these people, and then you put them in this kind of lock of this, this world that you've created for yourself because you have so much pain. And then at the end, the line that freaking killed me was like, they'll never know what she sacrificed for this. Oh, get the hell out of here right now. Get out of here. What do you mean they'll never know? It wasn't the poor people's fault. They had nothing to do with the pain. Why?
Yeah.
It's like, when they say hurt people. And I was like, the poor people didn't do anything. And then there's a witch thrown in there. I'm like, oh, we got witches in here now? What is happening right now? Don't get me wrong. Their makeups and their costumes are awesome. And I love seeing the diversity. They did a really, really good job. Asif Ali's in there.
Yeah,
a lot of other like really diverse, cool people were in there. And I was like, okay, I love it. But I just they lost me at the premise, man. It's just like, if you're going through pain, that's, I have much compassion for you, but why the fuck you taking over New Jersey?
Well, I think a couple points. I mean, I think that's a fair critique. What I would say is that the nice thing about being in this universe where the story never really ends is like everything is a down payment on a development later on. And we know that we're going to be seeing Wanda again in one of these movies at some point, and one expects that the stuff that happened here will pay off down the line. And we, I don't know, I feel reasonably certain, and if I'm wrong, you can yell at me again. But I feel like,
oh my god, I wasn't yelling. I hope I wasn't yelling at you.
No. You can. No, you weren't yelling at me. You can be like, hey, you were wrong, dude. I feel like the people being pissed off at her is gonna come back as a story point. And again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's my. But I mean, when you think about it, that's what you can do in this Marvel universe that is sort of unique. Like we've never had that, where it's like, here's a story. It started in here, and we're gonna pick it up here. We're gonna pick it up there, and it's the ball keeps rolling. And that's kind of, to me, that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I think when it comes to the Marvel shows, I'm extra biased because it's just like, it's a thing I share with my kids.
Yeah.
And like, for us, Friday afternoons is like Marvel show time. They get done with their classes. I get done with my class. We just sit down and we watch the new Marvel show. Okay. And I think to myself, I'm like, man, this is like, they're going to remember this. Like, that's, they'll be like, oh, this is a thing we did with Dad.
For sure.
And that's cool, But I don't think you're wrong. I hope that those specific plot points you're bringing up, I do hope that that's something that they don't just sort of broom under the rug, that they come back to that.
Yeah, I hope so too. Listen, I'm a Marvel kid. Like, I am obsessed with Marvel. Like, obsessed. I am a Marvel girl through and through. And I think for me, WandaVision kind of just threw me off a little bit. And I was like, what happened? I mean, Jesus, anything to do with Avengers, anything to do with anything, like freaking Captain America. Like, geez, I'm obsessed with Captain America. I even love Thanos. I'm like, Thanos is the man. It like scares the crap out of me. Freaking love it. I thought the Avengers was done so well. I started watching DC's League, the new one that just came out. What's it called?
Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Zack Snyder's, yeah.
It's a different flavor of ice cream. That's what I always say.
What did you think? 4 hours? Who's got that kind of time?
Well, I had to for professional reasons.
Well, yeah,
that's my excuse.
Someone like me who works a lot, for me, it's going to take me about 2 weeks to finish that movie.
Yeah, what I did in the lead up to that, and I'm glad I did, even though it was more of a time commitment, is I rewatched Man of Steel from 2013. I rewatched Batman versus Superman, and there's like an extended version of that. I watched that in the lead up to Justice League, and I was just like, I want to view this as one big story, which is obviously the filmmaker's intent, and that helped a lot. And I enjoyed Snyder's Justice League, and actually, I watched that with my kids too. Actually, we ended up marathoning the 4 hours rather than breaking it up.
Okay.
And truthfully, it went by pretty quickly, but it's definitely, it's one of those things where I'm like, this is not going to be for everybody. It just isn't. And so I don't, people who have negative reactions to those films, I get it, because I watched Batman versus Superman 5 years ago. It came out 5 years ago today, in fact. And I tweeted, I was like, I think I hated this movie. That was my tweet about Batman versus Superman. And so I didn't bother revisiting it. And so I revisited it this past week, and I appreciated it more as part of, it's like a story with a beginning, middle, and end. And I liked it more for that. But yeah, I mean, have some hydration handy if you're gonna watch it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything against DC Comics. I think Wonder Woman was great. The first one was like perfect. It was like so perfect. Really, and then the second one, again, I think the premise means a lot. I mean, if you don't have a strong premise, it makes it difficult. What did you think of Wonder Woman 2?
I really like Gal Gadot and in the role, and I really like Chris Pine as the love interest. So I enjoyed seeing them together. I wasn't a big fan of the movie, but I liked Pedro Pascal and I
Mm-hmm.
liked Gal Gadot and Chris Pine. So I think what I said in my critique is I was like, I think it's worth watching just for them because I think they're very good.
Yeah.
It to me, the first Wonder Woman, there's the scene when she first reveals herself. She goes onto the battlefield,
Yes.
and to me, that's like out of all the superhero movies we've ever seen, that's like a top three scene for me. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing, and we don't have anything like that in the second one.
Yes.
I think it's just okay. Like I didn't dislike it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a step down from the first one for sure.
Do you think, like, is it because she did such a great job on Wonder Woman 1? Like, she really had to bring it for Wonder Woman 2 because the standard is so high now, right?
Mhm.
Because of Wonder Woman 1. And it's usually hard to, like, so for me, I'll compare that to Guardians of the Galaxy. When I watched the first Guardians of the Galaxy, didn't know much about the characters,
Mhm.
loved it. Then I was
Yeah,
like, ooh, Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I'm like, ooh, how are they going to top the first one? The first one was so good. I watched
yeah.
the second one. I was like, man, they knocked it out of the park, man. They
Mhm.
were amazing. It was amazing. I've watched Guardians of the Galaxy 1 first and second. I
Mhm.
don't even know how many times I've watched it. Also, I have the mental disorder of going back and watching the same stuff over and over again.
That's
Um,
that all that says is that the movie speaks to you. So
It's
it's
so
a good.
amazing. But I think, and then I was like, oh my God, they're going to do the same thing with Wonder Woman 2. I know that they've greenlighted Wonder Woman 3 already
Yeah.
because it made
Yeah.
its money on the box office weekend that it opened up. But I watched something like that and I was like, is it because the bar was so high to me? Or is it because the movie actually just didn't even live up to what it was supposed to do? You know?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think that the first film it is kind of like lightning in a bottle, just everything it did right. But I think that there's strange sort of plot issues in the second one where you look at it and you're like, well, you needed another rewrite or two here. Like it there's issues that I feel like they could have licked. And
Mhm.
so that that's the stuff I look at and I'm like, well, why'd you do it that way? And I never want to put myself in the position of being like, oh, I know better than the filmmakers, but definitely you take a step back and you say, well, there's like certain plot issues that if you move a few of the pieces around, you get to where you need to, but it goes down easier.
Right, right, right.
I think to your point, like when I watched the second one, my reaction wasn't, oh man, this thing sucks, let's just flip the apple cart. I was like, well, I hope the third one is better. And so to
Mhm.
me, that and what tends to happen is if they're able to sort of fix it with the next one, then you have a more pleasant view of the previous one.
Yeah, yeah.
It's more of like a bump in the road.
I mean, for me, you know what did that for me was The Mandalorian. I had
Oh, sure.
never watched Star Wars in my entire life. Never watched it. Never wasn't interested in it. Whatever. It didn't speak to me.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll watch The Mandalorian because of Jon Favreau. Because I love him so
Mm,
much. Anything he
yeah.
does, I'll watch it. I've also met the guy. He's awesome, right?
He's great. Yeah.
He's a great
I
actor.
interviewed him for Chef.
Oh, did you?
Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
love
he's
that
awesome.
movie.
Isn't that
Love
good?
that movie. It's so good. I love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. And then he also had he also had a show on Netflix, like an actual cooking show because it was
Hmm.
inspired by
That's
Chef.
right.
You know what I'm
That's
talking
right.
about?
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
I do. I forget the name, but yeah.
with an Asian chef. He's an American Asian
Hmm.
chef. He's
That's right.
wonderful. He's wonderful.
The
Um,
Chef Show. It's called the Chef Show.
is it the chef show? Yeah, I think that's
I
what
think
it's
it is.
called. I think that's what
Yeah.
it's called.
And
I love
and by the way, can I tell you something?
it.
Watching that movie changed my approach to criticism
How
because
interesting.
that's exactly what it's about. That's about this guy who just gets shit on by this critic, and it just messes up his life. And
Mhm.
it watching that film really it made me internalize a lot of the conversation in that film and to try to whatever work I do, I want it to be hopefully a positive part of the conversation rather than just bringing people down. Because even if it's a bad movie, nobody sets out to make a bad movie, right? And
Sure.
so that goes to what I was saying earlier. Like if there's a constructive critique to be had, then even somebody who knows, like if it's a shit movie, they're gonna know on some level. You know what I mean?
That's
So
right.
it's like, do you just want to like step on them when they're down, or do you want to say, hey, here, let me help you out. Here's
Yeah,
what I think went wrong.
precisely. If you're making a Dude, Where's My Car? You know that you made Dude, Where's My Car? Like,
Yeah.
like there's no ifs or buts about that. But I watched The Mandalorian and I was like, okay, first of all, there's a baby Yoda in here. Shut the front door. Like, where do I go to buy a baby Yoda? I called up my brother and I was like, dude, have you been watching The Mandalorian? He was like, yeah. He's like, I grew up watching Star Wars. Hello. I was like, yeah, but I never watched it with you guys when you guys were watching. It was like a dude thing. You guys just watch a bunch of Star Wars and I didn't. And it inspired me so much because I wanted to know the origin of the Mandalorian. And I went back and watched all the Star Wars.
Wow.
That I had never watched before because he inspired me so much to go back. And
what'd you think?
Oh my God. The first and the second one is awesome. The first two are awesome. Yeah. And then I don't know what happened. When they had that Hayden Christensen guy come in, they lost me. I was like, I'm done. I don't know what happened here. Very easy on the eyes, but man, yeah, no. I thought the older ones were just so amazing. I thought the season finale of The Mandalorian was incredible. Just loved every second of it. And this is someone who never cares for movies like that. I don't care for, space stuff like, no, what? No. Interstellar, I loved, but that was more, it had a very, very powerful human story behind it. But The Mandalorian just really shifted my perspective. So I think Jon Favreau clearly has impacted both you and me.
For sure.
I mean, he's, and kudos to Jon Favreau for being so absolutely fantastic. He's wonderful. Zaki, where would you like people to follow you, or where can they go and read your amazing perspective?
Oh wow! Well, I'm usually at the San Francisco Chronicle every week. I'm also at IGN. My review, as I mentioned, of Godzilla vs. Kong should be going up, I think, early next week. If you want to find me on social media, that's probably the best place to find me on Twitter at Zaki's Corner, ZAKIS Corner. That's also my website, just added.com. And please check out the Movie Film Podcast, which drops every other week with news and reviews about the latest releases. And we have commentary tracks every other week where we watch a movie and we talk through it and offer our observations and, behind the scenes stories and whatnot. So awesome. A lot of fun.
Awesome. Zaki, it was a pleasure, man. I hope you'll come back and talk to us some more.
I was honored that you asked. So I'm always happy to come on.
Thank you very much, man. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye. That was the amazing Zaki Hasan. I really learned a lot talking to him about movies and critics and even my perspective on critics. You guys, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do. You can go to youtube.com/Mona Sheikh Comedian. And you can also follow me on Twitter, at Instagram at Mona's Comedy, and also on Facebook and TikTok at Mona Sheikh Comedian. You guys have a good evening. I will be back tomorrow with a brand new guest. And also, if you have Hulu or ABC, my episode is getting kicked off on The Rookie. The first episode for season 3 is my episode where I play Donna Abbasi on The Rookie on ABC. And it's going to be this Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern, and 9 Central. So you guys, I would love for you to go check it out. That would be amazing. Have a good evening. And also, I might as well, while I'm here, I actually also have a show that is going to be live streaming tomorrow. I'm going to be headlining that at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. And then on Saturday, I got booked to go and perform in solidarity with my Asian brothers and sisters on Saturday night at around 8 p.m. Pacific at the Laugh Factory. That is a free show. I'm going to be making those posts on my social media. You can totally check them out, sign up for them. But that's about it for me. You guys have a good evening. I will see you tomorrow. Good night.